Imagine you have two friends. Both of them invest the exact same amount of money, both start at the same age, both earn the exact same return on their investments, and both retire at age 65. You'd probably assume that they end up with the exact same amount of money, right? Well, not necessarily. One simple financial decision they made when they were in their 20s could mean one person keeps thousands, maybe even tens of thousands, more of their retirement savings than the other. And that decision has nothing to do with picking the right stock. It has nothing to do with timing the market. It doesn't even have anything to do with how much money they invested. It comes down to one question: when do you want to pay taxes? Today, we're talking about one of the most common questions people ask when they first start investing. Should I open up a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA? By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how each account works, the biggest differences between them, and how to decide which one might be right for you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you're watching. My name is Zane Belsack, and welcome back to another episode where we break down personal finance into simple, actionable steps that can help improve your financial future. If you've been following this series, in our last episode, we talked about your employer's 401k match and why it's one of the easiest ways to build wealth over time. But what happens after you've gotten your employer match? Or maybe your employer doesn't even offer a retirement plan. That's where today's topic comes in. We're talking about individual retirement accounts, better known as IRAs, and more specifically, the two most common types, the Roth IRA and the traditional IRA. Now, if you've ever searched this question online, you've probably been overwhelmed. People throw around terms like tax deductions, tax-free withdrawals, contribution limits, income phase-outs, required minimum distributions, and before you know it, you've got 15 browser tabs open and you're somehow even more confused than when you started. My goal today is to simplify all of that. We're going to leave the complicated financial jargon at the door and focus on understanding how these accounts actually work in plain English. Because once you understand one key concept, everything else starts to make sense. Let's imagine two people. We'll call them Emily and Jake. They're both 24 years old. They both just graduated college and they both landed their first full-time jobs making about the same salary. And after watching a few personal finance videos online, they both decide it's finally time to start investing for their retirement. Emily opens up a Roth IRA. Jake opens up a traditional IRA. And every month, they both contribute the same exact amount of money. They invest in similar funds. They earn nearly identical returns over the next 40 years. And fast forward to retirement, Emily starts taking money out of her account. Because of how a Roth IRA works, her qualified withdrawals are generally tax-free. Jake starts taking money out of his traditional IRA, but every withdrawal counts as taxable income, meaning he'll generally owe ordinary income taxes on the money he withdraws. Neither of them made a wrong decision. They simply chose different tax strategies, and that's exactly what a Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA really is. It's not about which account earns higher return. It's not about which account has better investments. It's about deciding when you want to pay taxes. Do you want to pay them today, or do you want to pay them decades from now? Before we compare the two accounts, I think it's important to answer a question that doesn't get asked very often. Why do retirement accounts even exist? Think about it this way. Imagine nobody saved for retirement. Eventually, millions of people would reach retirement age with little or no money set aside. Many would have to rely entirely on government programs or continue working much longer than they planned. And that's obviously not ideal. So over the years, Congress created different types of retirement accounts to encourage Americans to save for the future. The incentive are tax advantages. That's the entire purpose behind these accounts. The government is essentially saying, if you save money for retirement, we'll give you certain tax benefits. Both Roth and traditional IRAs offer those tax benefits, but they do it in different ways. Now, what exactly is an IRA? Before we compare them, let's clear up one of the biggest misconceptions I hear. A lot of people think a Roth IRA is an investment. It's not. A traditional IRA isn't an investment either. They're accounts, and let me explain what I mean. Now, imagine you buy a brand new toolbox. Is the toolbox the tool? No. The toolbox simply holds the tools, and an IRA works in the same way. The IRA is the container, and inside that container, you can own investments like stocks, ETFs, mutual funds, CDs or certificates of deposit, and other eligible investments. So when someone says, I invested in a Roth IRA, what they usually mean is I opened up a Roth IRA and then invested the money inside that account. That might sound like a small difference, but it's incredibly important because many beginners think opening the account automatically means their money is invested, and it doesn't. One of the biggest mistakes people make is opening a Roth IRA, depositing money into it, and then forgetting to actually invest that money. Instead of growing it in the market, it just sits there in cash. And while cash has its place, most people are opening retirement accounts because they want long-term growth. So remember this, the IRA is the account and the investments go inside that account. Let's get to the question everyone wants answered. What's the difference? Believe it or not, there's really only one major concept you need to understand, and everything else builds off of it. And that concept is taxes. A Roth IRA asks you to pay taxes now, and a traditional IRA generally lets you postpone paying those taxes until retirement. That's it. That's the foundation. Now let's use an example. Imagine your paycheck hits your bank account. With a Roth IRA, you've already paid income taxes on that money. So when you contribute to a Roth IRA, you're investing after-tax dollars. The trade-off? If you follow the IRS rules, your qualified withdrawals in retirement are generally tax-free. Now, let's look at the traditional IRA. When you contribute to a traditional IRA, depending on the circumstances, you may receive a tax deduction for that contribution. That means you could reduce your taxable income today. It sounds great, right? Well, sadly, there's a trade-off. When you retire and begin taking money out of it, those withdrawals are generally taxed as ordinary income. So here's another way to think about it. Imagine the IRS knocks at your door. With a Roth IRA, you pay them today. With a traditional IRA, you tell them, I'll see you in 30 or 40 years. Neither answer is automatically right, but it really depends entirely on your situation. At this point, you may be thinking, who cares when I pay taxes as long as I'm investing? Isn't that what really matters? And first of all, investing consistently absolutely matters, but taxes have a significant impact on how much money you ultimately keep. Think about it this way. If you knew your tax rate today was lower than what it might be in retirement, paying taxes now through a Roth IRA could make a lot of sense. But on the other hand, if you're currently in one of the highest earning years of your career and expect to be in a lower tax bracket once you retire, a traditional IRA might provide more value because of the potential tax deduction today. The challenge is none of us own a crystal ball. We don't know exactly what tax rates will look like 30 to 40 years from now. We don't know what Congress will change. We don't know how much income we'll have in retirement. And that's why this decision isn't about predicting the future perfectly. It's really about making the most informed decisions based off your current situation and your long-term goals. And in the next section, we're going to dive into exactly how each account works, including the 2026 contribution limits, eligibility rules, withdrawal rules, and some real-world examples that'll make this decision much easier. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, Zane, just tell me which one is better. And honestly, that's the wrong question. A Roth IRA isn't better than a traditional IRA, and a traditional IRA isn't better than a Roth IRA. The better question is, which one is better for you? Because your age, your income, your tax bracket, and even where you are in your career can influence which account makes the most sense. Let's take a closer look by looking at each account individually. Let's start with a Roth IRA. The easiest way to think about a Roth IRA is this. You pay taxes now so that you don't have to pay them later. Now, imagine you earn $1,000 from your job, and before that money ever reaches your bank account, you've already paid income taxes on it. So whatever is left is yours to spend, save, or invest. If you decide to contribute some of that money to a Roth IRA, you're investing after-tax dollars. This is the really exciting part. Let's imagine you invest that money for the next 40 years. Your investments grow, they earn dividends, maybe they double, maybe they triple, maybe they grow even more. As long as you follow the IRS rules for qualified withdrawals, you generally won't owe federal income taxes on either your original contributions or the investment growth when you withdraw the money in retirement. Now, let's think about that for a second. Not only did your original investment grow, but all of that growth can potentially come out tax-free. That's one of the biggest reasons why so many younger investors are attracted to Roth IRAs. They're paying taxes while their income and often their tax bracket are relatively low in hopes of avoiding these taxes later in retirement. I want to mention something important. Whether we're talking about retirement accounts, there are always IRS rules involved. For example, in order to receive the full tax advantage of a Roth IRA, qualified withdrawals generally require that you met certain conditions, such as age and holding period retirements. And I'm not going to spend today's video diving into every IRS exception because that could honestly be an episode all by itself. But instead, I want to focus on helping you understand the overall concept so you could make a more informed decision. If enough people are interested, I'd be happy to make an entire episode explaining a Roth IRA and their withdrawal rules in more detail. Let's take a look at a traditional IRA. Instead of paying taxes today, you're potentially postponing those taxes into retirement. And here's exactly what that looks like. So, depending on your income and whether you're covered by a retirement plan at work, contributing to a traditional IRA may allow you to deduct that contribution on your tax return. You could lower your taxable income for the current year. And that means that you might pay less taxes today. And I know that sounds pretty great, right? Well, remember what we talked about earlier. Taxes don't disappear, they simply move. And instead of paying taxes today, you'll generally pay ordinary income taxes when you withdraw the money during retirement. The question really becomes, would you rather receive the tax benefit now or later? Let's compare these side by side. Sometimes the easiest way to understand something is by comparing them directly. Let's imagine we have two buckets. One of them is labeled the Roth IRA, and one of them is labeled the traditional IRA. And here's what each bucket looks like. So with a Roth IRA, you contribute money that's already been taxed, and your investments have the potential to grow over time. And qualified withdrawals are generally tax-free. And then with a traditional IRA, you might receive a tax deduction when you contribute, and your investments also have the potential to grow over time, but withdrawals are generally taxed as ordinary income during retirement. So do you notice something interesting? The investments themselves can be the exact same. You can own the exact same ETFs in both accounts. The difference isn't the investment, it's how Uncle Sam taxes the money. And that's why I keep coming back to taxes. It's the entire foundation of this decision. Let's talk about one of the most common questions people ask. How much can I actually contribute? And in 2026, the IRS allows most individuals under age 50 to contribute up to $7,500 across all of their IRAs combined. That means if you contribute $4,000 to a Roth IRA, you don't get another separate $7,500 limit for a traditional IRA. The combined between your total Roth and traditional IRAs generally cannot exceed the annual IRS contribution limit. Now, if you're age 50 and older, the IRS also allows an additional catch-up contribution. And remember, IRS contributions can change over time because they're often adjusted for inflation. So if you're watching this video several years after it's published, make sure to check the current limits on the IRS website. Here's another important point that often surprises people. Just because you want to contribute to a Roth IRA doesn't automatically mean you're eligible to contribute the full amount. Roth IRAs have income limits. As your income increases, the amount you're allowed to contribute may begin to phase out. Eventually, depending on your income and your tax filing status, you'll no longer be eligible to make direct Roth IRA contributions. Traditional IRAs work a little differently. You can generally contribute regardless of income, but your ability to deduct those contributions may be limited depending on your income and whether you're covered by a retirement plan through your employer. So I know it sounds very complicated, but the important takeaway isn't memorizing every income threshold. The important takeaway is simply knowing that income can affect your options. And if you're ever unsure, that's a great time to work with a qualified tax professional or a financial planner who can help you determine what you're eligible for. And as always, I'll leave links to the official IRS resources in the description so you can always check the current rules for yourself. So let's make this real. Let's imagine two people. Sarah is 24 years old. She started her first job making $55,000 per year. And Michael is 58 years old. and he's earning over $200,000 annually and plans to retire within the next several years. Should they automatically choose the same account? Probably not. Sarah may expect her income to increase significantly over her career. And if that's the case, paying taxes now while she's in a lower tax bracket might make a lot of sense. Michael, on the other hand, might be in one of his highest earning years of his life, and receiving a tax deduction today through a traditional IRA could potentially provide a greater immediate benefit. So, you notice what happened here. Neither account changed, only the people changed, and that's exactly why there isn't really a universally best retirement account. The best choice really depends on your individual situation. Now that we understand how each account works, let's answer the question that everyone's been waiting for. Who should actually choose a Roth IRA? While there's no one-size-fits-all answer, there are a few situations in which a Roth IRA makes a lot of sense. So, first, if you're early in your career, say maybe you're in your 20s or 30s, maybe you just graduated college, just started your first full-time job, there's a good chance you're earning less today than you hope to earn in 10, 20, or 30 years from now. If that's true, you may also be in a lower tax bracket than you will be later in life. So, paying taxes now while your income is relatively low could potentially save you money over the long run. Another group that often likes Roth IRAs is people who expect tax rates to increase in the future. Now, none of us know what exactly the tax rates will look like 20 to 30 years from now. Nobody has a crystal ball, but if you believe taxes could be higher by the time you retire, paying taxes today instead of later might be appealing. Finally, many people simply like the idea of tax-free withdrawals in retirement. So imagine getting to retirement and not having to wonder how much of this withdrawal is going to taxes. That's something incredibly valuable about knowing that if you met the IRS requirements, your qualified Roth IRA withdrawals are generally tax-free. So predictability can actually make this retirement planning much simpler. Let's flip the conversation. Who might benefit from a traditional IRA? Again, there's no universal answer, but one group that often benefits are people who are currently earning a relatively high income. Let's imagine you're in your 40s or 50s, you've worked hard, you've advanced in your career, and you're earning significantly more than you did 10 or 15 years ago. If you're in a higher tax bracket today than you expected during retirement, receiving a tax deduction now could potentially provide more value. In other words, you might prefer to reduce the taxes while you're earning the most money and then pay taxes while your income is lower. Another reason people choose a traditional IRA is because they simply need the tax deduction today. Maybe lowering their taxable income helps them reach another financial goal. Maybe it frees up additional cash flow. Again, neither account is automatically better, but they're solving for different problems. Here's something I think is really important. The biggest mistake isn't choosing the wrong IRA. The biggest mistake is never investing at all. I see people spend months trying to decide between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA. They read articles, they watch YouTube videos, ask friends, read Reddit posts, and 6 months later, they still haven't opened up an account. Meanwhile, someone else opened up an account 6 months ago and they already started investing. Don't let perfect become the enemy of progress. Yes, choosing the right account matters, but actually starting matters even more. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a few mistakes that I see people make all the time. Mistake number 1, thinking the IRA invests your money automatically. Remember earlier when I compared an IRA to a toolbox? Well, opening the account isn't enough. You need to actually contribute the investments. Otherwise, your money could simply sit in cash. And I've met people who didn't realize this for years. Don't let that happen to you. Mistake number 2, waiting until you have more money. This is something I hear all the time. I'll start investing once I make more. The problem is, life usually gets more expensive. As your income increases, your expenses often increase too. There's always going to be another reason to wait. And that's why developing the habit of investing, even if it's only a small amount, is so powerful. Remember, consistency often matters more than perfection. And mistake number 3, trying to time the market. Some people think I'm going to wait until the market crashes, or I'll invest once stocks come back down. And the truth is, nobody consistently knows what the market is going to do tomorrow, next week, or next month. If professional investors with teams or analysts can't consistently predict the market, then neither can we. For long-term investing, history has generally rewarded people who invested consistently rather than trying to perfectly time their investments. Mistake number 4 is thinking you have to be rich to invest, and this couldn't be further from the truth. One of the greatest advantages young investors have isn't money, it's time. If you're a 24-year-old, you have decades for compounded growth to work in your favor. And starting early, even with relatively small contributions, can make an enormous difference over the course of your career. And that's why I always encourage people to focus on building the habit first, because you can always increase your contributions later. Now that you know the differences, you might be wondering, okay, where do I actually open one? The good news is opening an IRA is much easier than people expect. Many well-known financial institutions offer both Roth IRAs and traditional IRAs, and examples include companies like Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, and others. The process typically involves creating an account, verifying your identity, linking a bank account, funding the IRA, and then selecting your investments. That's really it. And the hardest part isn't usually opening the account, it's taking the first step. So, here's today's takeaway. A Roth IRA and a traditional IRA are both excellent retirement savings tools. The biggest difference isn't what you invest in, it's when you pay the taxes. A Roth IRA generally asks you to pay taxes today in exchange for potentially tax-free qualified withdrawals later. A traditional IRA may provide a tax benefit today, but you'll generally pay taxes when you withdraw the money in retirement. The right choice depends on your income, your goals, your tax situation, and your expectations for the future. And remember, doing something is almost always better than doing nothing. The sooner you start investing for retirement, the more time your money has the opportunity to grow. Now, I'd love to hear from you. If you were opening up your first retirement account today, would you choose a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA? Let me know why down in the comments. I'm excited to read your answers, and who knows, your response might even inspire a future episode. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like, subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and if you have any ideas for future videos, suggestions on how I can improve, or feedback about today's episode, be sure to fill out the Google form. You'll find the link in the comments section. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.